Welcome to part two of our discussion of American fiction, the movie, Erasure, the novel by Percival Everett that the movie was based on. And in this second part, what I want to get at are the novels at the heart of these books or of these stories. American Fiction and Erasure are both stories about the writing, publishing, and marketing of a book. It's the book that the main character, Monk, writes. And originally the title is My Pathology, which I think is the title he should have gone with, but it morphs into Fuck as the novel and the movie go along. There's another novel within the novel, within the movie, and it's the novel that inspires the writing of My Pathology. And in both the novel and the movie, the book is titled "We Lives in the Ghetto." In the movie version, the author's name is Centara Golden, and in the novel, her name is Juanita Mae Jenkins. And we just get a little taste of these in both the movie and the book. In American Fiction, we see Golden reading an excerpt in front of a packed auditorium. We kind of have it from Monk's perspective as he's looking out over the auditorium. And this is after hearing her talk about her experiences in publishing and how none of the stories she was reading as a young editor in training were representative of my people. She draws a standing ovation from both fawning white book club Karens and earnest young black fangirls. In Erasure, it's different. We read along with Monk the opening paragraph before he disgustedly puts it back on the shelf. There was a very real book at the heart of that Weeze lives in the ghetto, is satirizing. And this book was enormously popular. It was notorious even back in the day. And it's a book that received its own very successful movie adaptation. And the book seems to have stood the test of time. It was just re-released in a 25th anniversary edition in 2021 with an extensive afterword by the author. The big reveal. And it's not really a secret, but just in case. That novel is Push. Not very dissimilar from Fuck, the title of the novel ultimately published. This is the 25th anniversary edition. I read this not long after it came out, intrigued by the hoopla. And a big part of that hoopla was the news around the publication of it. And I have just printed an article from the Times, a profile from the New York Times from the time that it was published, which was 1996. Alfred A. Knopf paid Sapphire $500,000 for Push as part of a 2-book deal. This was Sapphire's first novel, and gave it a first printing of $75,000, big for a first novel. And I mean, those numbers, both the print run and the advance, those are big numbers, and would be big numbers even today. Like, that would be newsworthy today. And certainly was in 1996. I think the movie was well received. The movie's title was also changed, called Precious, which is the name of the main character in Push. Came out in 2009, so a good bit after the book. And I mentioned earlier that Knopf had given Sapphire a 2-book deal. Push was her first, 1996. 2 years after the movie, 2011, was when the second book of that 2-book deal finally came out, and it was called The Kid. Of course, there's no way to prove definitively that Erasure is satirizing Push specifically. I think it's generally accepted now, but Everett is not on record as stating that specifically. But I think it's pretty clear from the similarity in the titles idiosyncratic spellings, the phonetic spellings. And to my mind, the real tell is the use of the spelling Down Cinder for Down syndrome, both in Push, where Precious's oldest child, her daughter, has, and this is stated in the first paragraph, Down Cinder, and in My Pathology, in the third paragraph, one of Van Gogh's children also has Down Cinder, and that, I think, is, to my mind, enough of a tell. That's the wink, saying of Everett letting us know that this is the book that he's specifically referring to. The afterword of Push is, this is where she is defending her novel and making her case, bolstered by graduate student writings about the book that have come out in the interim, making the case that she was writing explicitly, attempting to give voice to the downtrodden, to an overlooked, marginalized group. And of course, she has the right to make that case and to make that claim and to support it. And Everett, satirizing Push, I would argue, assumes that the outcome, this $500,000 advance, this massive print run, all of the movie adaptation, all of the success, all of the hoopla surrounding it and surrounding the writer, argues that outcome reflects the writer's intent. Now, of course, any writer, that's sort of the dream, right? That's the big payday, the big splashy, first novel, mega blockbuster success. But was that her intent, to write essentially an exploitative novel for the clout and the riches that did come her way? She couldn't possibly have known that would be the outcome, any more than Monk, the writer, could know that would be the outcome for My Pathology / Fuck, right? If it was, as I said earlier, if it was that easy, everybody would be doing it. If it was just a matter of plugging into a certain formula, that would be something that we'd all be doing. And it's not that easy. This was lightning in a bottle. And just because a novel has a message or is attempting to speak for a downtrodden or marginalized group, a group that doesn't have a voice to speak for them, does not necessarily make it bad art. And just because it has a political or even a propagandistic intent doesn't make it bad art. Lots of the towering greats of literature have come from this stance, have worked in this vein. Dickens, Dumas, Steinbeck, Stendhal, Solzhenitsyn, the list goes on and on and on. And this is the place that she claims in the afterword to be coming from. It's a very compelling read. It's a page turner. You do find yourself, similar to Van Gogh in My Pathology, you find yourself rooting for Precious because the odds are stacked against her, and very credibly stacked against her. And you find yourself rooting for her to succeed. My issue with the book really is just the kind of the glibness of it, in that her success, her turning the corner and finding success, happens very, very quickly. The idea seems to be that all she needed to do was move out of her house as a 14-year-old and find a small special needs class that would cater to her. And both these things would be nearly impossible for a girl her age. And that as a result, she would then be able to find her footing, get out from under her horrible, horrible mother, and learn to read and write in a brief amount of time and start to turn things around in the time span indicated in the book is preposterous. As preposterous as the rapidity with which My Pathology is written, published, and written, sold, and published in both the book and the movie. Both things happen just remarkably quickly. His writing is brainy. It's often philosophical. It makes you think. It is well thought through. It's literary in the sense that it's supremely well written and well crafted, but it's also literary in the sense that it is aware of literature and is responding to the canon often. Erasure is a very meta book about the life and the world of writing books. His most recent book, James, which I haven't read yet, but is on deck for me certainly, is his telling of Huck Finn from Jim's point of view, which is great. I mean, a great idea, and has gotten good reviews. And the novel before that, which I have read and which is very funny, is Dr. No, which is. That's the title of an actual James Bond, Ian Fleming James Bond novel, and it is Everett's take on the James Bond spy novel genre, and it's hilarious. It's great. So, he's a very literary writer, but there's some bitterness to this critique, and he's 10 books in at the point that Erasure comes out, and while Erasure did have at the time was, I guess, a big 6 publisher, and they're now 5, but for the most part, Everett's publishing career has been with Grey Wolf Publishing, which is a phenomenal indie press, a great press, but not an indie press, not one of the big 6, not going to get you huge distribution and the type of popularity, the type of sales that a book like Push and a publisher like Alfred Knopf is going to get for you. There's bitterness in the critique. There's professional jealousy, and I think it's part of what makes the book so fascinating, part of what gives it the vitriol that it has. But there's also a genuine vitriol, a genuine chafing at this role that Everett feels, and Monk in the book. I shouldn't be talking about Everett because obviously I can't know what's going on in his mind, but that Monk in the book, the author in the book, is really chafing against this idea that you are an African American and you're writing, therefore you should be setting your books in the urban big city ghetto. That's what we want. That's what we know. That's what you should be doing. That's what that's what we would buy. We being, white male publishing at the time, certainly in the 90s. That's what we would buy. That's what our readership wants. And he's chafing against that. Monk in the book, I think this is true of Everett as well, but again, I'm going to stick to Monk. So by the time, for earlier generations, you can maybe understand as African Americans are moving into publishing, and there are very few of them, you can understand them feeling like they have to be the voice of their people, racist as that expectation is from the society at large. But by the time you get to somebody like Everett, it is horribly racist and horribly constricting. It's interesting, in the book and the movie, Erasure and American Fiction, they make it pretty clear that Centara Golden, Juanita Mae Jenkins, the author of We Lived in the Ghetto, is not a woman like Sapphire. Sapphire, in her afterword, identifies as a queer/lesbian African-American woman, obviously, and speaking for a downtrodden character, a voiceless class, essentially, a marginalized group. She is a marginalized woman speaking for an even further marginalized group. And in American Fiction, they make Centara Golden very different. They make her coming from a more privileged class, having gone to Oberlin, which I love that now stands for sort of the ultimate in libtard radical leftist small private college. That is Oberlin, and it this isn't the only place where I've seen it sort of used to stand in for that, in much the same way that Harvard gets used to stand in for, elitist, entitled, privileged, smart but assholes. So she went to Oberlin, worked in New York publishing. So she is coming from a very different background than Sapphire, and that allows the movie and the book to poke fun at her and to target her, essentially, because even though she's an African-American woman, she is coming from this place of privilege, whereas as Sapphire was not. And, lived in Harlem and worked with kids not unlike Precious, and mentions in the afterward, tells a story about a girl that she met who was pregnant with a child by her father. And, that's akin to Santara Golden saying, I conducted some interviews for this book. But it's one thing to poke fun at her, and especially to poke fun at the white Karens who are, it's open season on them at this point. The white Karens who, stand and applaud Santara Golden, and to poke fun at the very crass, or the very craven, white editors who want to buy this book and see it having a huge success and falling for the Stag R. Lee character that Monk creates. It's very easy to satirize them, but to actually pick on a woman like Sapphire is a completely different kettle of fish. So if you've made it this far, thank you. Appreciate your attention. Leave a like if you've gotten some value or some entertainment out of this discussion. And if you have an opinion on Push or Erasure or American Fiction or how all of these things interact, I'd love to hear it in the comments. I would love to get a discussion going. Hit subscribe. I'll be putting out more videos in coming days, and look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks again.